I'm sitting down with some of my fellow classmates here to talk about the first year experience. So, could everyone just introduce themselves?
Yep, so I'm Bruce Grégoire, first year here at the U. I grew up in Rochester.
I'm Ahmed Mohamed. I grew up in Seattle. I'm a first-year medical student.
I'm Brendan Johnson, and I grew up in Eden Prairie and also am a first-year medical student.
And I am Elle Newcome. I grew up in St. Paul, and I'm a first-year medical student as well.
Well, thank you guys for being with us today. We're really excited. We have a lot of readers who want to hear about how the first year has changed and how it's the same. Tell me about your journey to medical school.
So I grew up in Rochester, and that is really like the ultimate company town when it comes to medicine, and had a lot of exposure to the medical field growing up there. But when I left for university, I tried to branch out a little bit away from it and try to think about other things that I wanted to do. So I took an economics degree in my undergrad, just kind of trying something different. But in that time, trying to get a little bit more involved in the community, I did some volunteering in hospice care. And it was those first few times that I interacted with patients and kind of got their story and got to kind of get the overall gestalt of what their life was, when I kind of got to see why all the people that I'd grown up with in my own community had been so interested in medicine and being part of those stories and those patients' lives. And so kind of like how I guess Minnesota is just kind of a place you return to, it seems like medicine kind of is similar when you got some exposure to it. So came back to it after doing some graduate research, and really excited to be back in it.
So after graduating from college, I went on to work with Pfizer and learned about drug development, and got some exposure through learning about the drugs. And then I started volunteering at a local hospital, and I enjoyed what the doctors did, interacting with patients, and then being the teachers teaching patients. And that's something I saw that I could do in the future. So that's when I decided to go to medical school.
I have a similar story as you, Bruce. I have some family members who had been in healthcare, so something that I felt that I was exposed to pretty early and always enjoyed. But when I went to college, I kind of almost tried to get away from it. And I did a degree in chemistry, but also in Norwegian language, and just trying to take classes in different areas, explore different things, but it's something that I kept feeling a pull back to. And you do get that human side and the scientific side, and it's something that has a strong pull on all of us, I think.
Do you speak Norwegian, Brendan?
Yes.
That's awesome. Okay, I won't put you on the spot by making you say anything right now. Okay.
And I can definitely relate with that, having parents in the medical field. And I think because of that, I didn't want to go into medicine because that was what I was familiar with. And so I ended up studying Spanish and sort of poverty studies and development in college. And I had a shadowing experience where a physician was speaking with a patient and sort of just put the medicine aside and connected with the patient in a very vulnerable, meaningful way. And I think that ability to just sort of tap into not only the science aspect of healing, but also the vulnerability was just sort of a really incredible way to see more sides of humanity.
We have a lot of new technologies, a lot of things that are different in terms of, we don't have to go to class. I know a lot of you guys, I picked this group out of a classroom, so you guys are probably class goers. But can you tell me just generally, what is and I know we don't have an average day, but kind of give me an idea of what an average day in our week looks like. And we can start with Ali.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say for me, an average day is I like to go to class on occasion. I enjoy connecting with this fine set of classmates that I have. And on occasion, I will also stream lecture. And I try to get outside at least once a day. And then usually in the afternoon, I'll post up at a coffee shop and sort of review lectures and materials that we were presented.
Yeah, I think the same thing for me. I have been about maybe 80% going to class. I really like the social aspect, and I feel that I pay a lot more attention. I know a lot of members of our class have just gone over to seeing it online, and so I do that a little bit, maybe 20%. But yeah, usually we'll have class in the morning, and then either a free afternoon or maybe a lab or a different clinical experience. So that's kind of what a general day looks like. And then the evening is for relaxing or studying, depending on what's going on at the time.
Yeah, I can go based off of that. So usually I come to lecture, but now, well, when it was in the winter, I decided not to like sit down. No, but it was because of the drive. I live so far,
Yeah.
so it's easier to stream in lectures. But coming to class is nice. I can socialize with people like here, and also like I can connect with the professor if I have a question, ask them. And then usually if I'm not at lecture, I'm at some cafe shops watching the lectures or studying.
Yeah, so I chose to live in one of the medical fraternities because.
Which one are you living in? Our readers might.
Oh yeah, so I live in Nu Sigma Nu here at the
Represent.
university.
There you go.
I wonder how many of our viewers are familiar with those illustrious institutions.
Yes, we have a very distinguished tradition.
But I chose to live there explicitly because I wanted the convenience of being able to come to class. I like the social aspect of coming to class, so I come to basically every class. And I like coming to class because some of the viewers might remember how kind of isolating school can be sometimes, just because it's so, it's the drinking from the fire hose. It's so much work you got to put in, and so like coming to class is nice that you're able to connect in those instances. And then the rest of my day, I always joke that I'm trained to be a radiologist because I'm just sitting there just poring over notes continuously like by myself. So that's my day. Yeah.
So people might find this interesting. So one something that I've heard used as a verb is, I'm gonna 2 times this. What does that mean? Would someone be able to explain what it means? Like I'm gonna 2 times something?
I am a 2-timer.
No.
On occasion, I'm a 3-timer.
Nice.
Yes, I
So
do.
explain it.
So what that is that our professors will record lecture, and you can actually watch the lecture at 2 times the speed at which it was given.
What does that sound like?
Yeah, can you give us a recreation?
In Norwegian?
No, I
No,
just
wait,
did it.
2-speed Norwegian. Can I do 2-speed English?
And I like that it's efficient and it keeps me on my toes.
Mhm.
There are definitely different paces at which lecturers present their information, and so that will definitely affect the speed at which I will watch the lecture.
This is the first time I've been recording in quite some time, and I'm kind of offended at the possibility that our viewers might be 2 times.
Yeah. Could you guys just share what Sketchy Micro or some alternative learning things that you've used that are a little bit different from the textbooks and overheads that might be more familiar to some people?
So Sketchy Micro is something that I think the majority of our class members purchased, and it was started by a medical student a couple years ago, and each pathogen is presented with a picture, and each picture has many different points. So the salmonella is like a salmon dinner, and they'll have different scenes. The bird will have a sickle, or there'll be, and that stands for the fact that it's worse than sickle cell disease, or there'll be a lemon, which means that it's acid labile.
So it's a memory tool.
So it's a memory tool, and you have different memory aids that you can look at, and each one is different, and they're very distinctive, and when you're in the middle of the test, you'll be able to think back to that picture, and each one's a short video that goes along.
I think it's like the epitome of how medical education is kind of transferring into this, like, how can you be the most efficient learner as opposed to like maybe what's like the most comprehensive learning style. And it's like creating this memory palace for you where you have this like distinct picture, and for the visual learners out there, it just increases your recall ability.
Yeah, I want to tap into that. So one thing that I think is, not everyone has the same learning style, and I think even in this room, I'm sensing that we probably have different learning styles. So could you guys really quick just tell me, how do you learn best? Ahmed, how do you learn best?
So, I just learned by just going through the PowerPoints.
Okay.
I never make outlines. I just don't. I just take notes
Do
on
you
the
have photographic memory? Or
not saying that, but like it's just I know for me like just going through the PowerPoint is just like easier than like
Cool.
taking time to write notes.
What about you?
In some of the classes, I like to make an outline during class, and that's one of the benefits of not going on 2 times speed is that you have a little more time.
Sure.
So I'll make an outline in class, and then I'll review it, ideally once at the end of the week, and then once again before the finals or the midterm.
Ellie?
Yeah, I think my learning style definitely has shifted this year. In the past, I would handwrite notes and go over things, and with the amount of material that were presented, that's just not a possibility. And so I'll make outlines. I'm very much a solo studier, and so just trying to take the information and put it in its most distilled form, and then repetition is my go-to.
Bruce, do you have anything different from that?
Yeah, I'm a real solo studier. I used to always say that my science style is to kind of burn into my brain, but now having taken neuroscience, I can describe it a little bit more. It's actually, I keep reactivating my hippocampus to send back to my
Wow,
prefrontal
whatever
cortex.
he's doing is working.
But no outlines or anything. I just go through the slides ad nauseum until it's completely
Okay.
just like burned in there.
That's awesome, Bruce. Okay. So we've talked a lot about learning and kind of the fundamentals of what the daily medical school experience is like. Could you guys walk through with me what's one thing that you really are surprised that in reflecting on our past year you've been really surprised by, whether it's personally or related to school or something that's happened that you'd like to share and that's interesting?
I think one of my big worries when I was coming into medical school is that I talked to a lot of medical students at the time, and they talked about how stressful it was and how much work it was and how it's kind of an unforgiving path in some ways that you put a lot into it. But I really don't think at any point I've ever kind of doubted that this was what I wanted to be doing, that this is kind of where I thought I'd be able to kind of live my best life, I guess. So it's been gratifying to know that like those like concerns I had going into it haven't really come to fruition. I'm quite pleased to be here.
Yeah, one of my worries when I got into medical school was that it was gonna be cutthroat. Like everyone, people would not help out each other. But I was kind of surprised, like with medical school, like how collaborative everyone is. Everyone wants to help each other to reach their goals. So, like, I was surprised by that.
That's awesome.
And I think going off that a little bit, I've been just surprised by our classmates and how wonderful it's been to get to know everybody. And it's always a collaborative environment. There doesn't seem to be any element of competition, and there's student groups and skills learning groups that we have, or different ways that you get to know, or even in class we get to know each other, and it's just been such a positive experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing about that too, so one thing that's recently changed is that University of Minnesota no longer has honors, which was so we're the first class to not have an honors system in the first 2 years. So we do have it in the last 2, but we don't have it in the first 2. So can you guys tell me about? I mean, I know it's hard because we haven't had honors, but do you feel that just comparing the class above us to our class now, do you feel like there's a difference that you kind of tap into? Brennan, you're shaking your head. Yes.
I think so. I think because everything is just pass-fail now, any sense that you want to do well is internal, and there's not some looming grade over your head. You can really engage with things to the level that you want, to the level that you feel like you need to, and that's just. And I think even on a social level too, it's become a lot more collaborative. And I think it's a really good change.
What it's like to force yourself to kind of take time every day.
Yeah.
And anyone can jump in on this too.
And I think for me, in past academic experiences, I've gone through points where I don't carve out that time for myself. And that has not been terribly conducive to physical, mental, emotional well-being. I think it's so remarkably important to be able to take a step back of what's immediately in front of you and just sort of put things back in context. I've really enjoyed, especially getting outside, being able to, go on a bike ride with classmates and I think from that it's less about the activity and more about connecting and the conversations during that time. Yeah.
This is a pretty, it's been described as drinking out of a fire hose or a marathon. It's quite an amazing experience, a very unique privilege that we have to be here. How do you feel that, is there anything that sticks out in terms of, wow, moments that you really realized how lucky you were to be here, or that really surprised you, or maybe shows you how you've grown?
I think just sort of reflecting on the overall experience of first year, that there were a lot of things that I held as, important to my life that sort of went out of the window first semester, in terms of taking time to sit down and journal, or carving out time to go to family dinner, or time for conversations with friends that just for the sake of being on top of the academics and trying to get back in the groove of things, I let go of. And so I think that there's definitely been a realization of what fundamental structures I need for a life balance that would allow me to best serve others in the future.
I think something for me that really struck me was our anatomy class in the first semester. And, there'd be experiences where you're inside of the anatomy labs and you got your gloves on and, you're just doing this really profound, special experience that we're having, kind of otherworldly in kind of like a different sphere. But then you take off your gloves and you can step out of the door and suddenly you're just in a quotidian, like, school building. And people can walk by and you could have a conversation with them and, people wouldn't even know. And it's just, I've been struck by the kind of the profundity of our role in that we can move just between these spaces kind of into this special sphere where it is life and death, and there are terminal diagnoses or the bodies of donors, and then go back into kind of the daily life and normal conversations, and that we're going to be privileged enough to be able to be in that spot where we can go back and forth and kind of mediate the way that works for patients and for ourselves.
Yeah, that's really true.
Reflecting on first year, there's a large volume of material that you learn, and sometimes you lose sight of you're learning this material but you're not applying it. So for me, POCC, when I did the surgery rotation, was like an eye-opener, like I'm going to be a doctor. So I went in, the surgeon removed the tumor, and he asked me to go to the path lab to see if all the margins were done. So I went to the path lab, and I just saw them cutting the tumor and feeling the margins, looking underneath the microscope. And at that moment, for me, it was a realization, wow, I'm learning things from the basic sciences, and this is being applied. So that was really amazing.
It's really, it is, and I think that we're all kind of speaking into the same theme of wow, we're here, and just recognizing how to navigate that. And I think that we've accomplished that well in the first year. So, in closing, what's one thing you guys are most excited for the future of medical? You have all have bright futures, but what in terms of your medical education, what's something that you're most looking forward to?
I'm excited to see what specialties people choose, just in terms of personality and where that all lines up, especially in people that I know fairly well.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fun.
Me too, Ellie.
I think just being able to have more contact with patients, that's we're obviously kind of in the basic science part of our education right now, but when the rubber hits the road, I think I'm looking forward to that a lot.
I'll follow up on that. I think something that I'm looking forward to that's kind of a simple pleasure, and a lot of the viewers might kind of laugh at how simple it is, but I'm just excited to see my first patient for the second time. I've never actually followed up with the patient, to like see them again and be really excited to follow up with them. I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm looking forward to like continue learning, not only from my patients, but just like in the medical field. So.
That's awesome. Well, thank you to 4 exceptional people from the class of 2021 at the University of Minnesota Medical School. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
And thank
you.
you for your time.